divinity, two aspects of the one, 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 two aspects of the one. Two aspects of the one divinity, two aspects of the one. The one divinity, one divinity, one. I think what we're seeking is an experience of being alive, so that the life experiences that we have will have resonances within that are those of our own innermost being.
So welcome to the part 2 of Integral Review Live. This time we're doing the second episode.
The message of the myth. I'm super excited about it. How you feeling about it, Alyosha?
The first one was a bit more specific. This one felt there were more broad themes, and I also think there were some important distinctions made. For me, this episode was probably a bit better because it felt broader and more to the point. I think he made some important distinctions here that a lot of green people confuse, and I think it was a great episode. Now, my way of watching is I don't watch any further parts because I just want to stay on the topic of each part, although we obviously are going to mess around, but in general I really liked this episode. It was great. Yeah. And what was your experience?
I liked it too. I haven't watched it in a while, so like you, I'm kind of only watching one episode at a time to try and get the same kind of experience I'm hoping that other people are getting. I think that it does a pretty good job of laying the foundation for some of the themes that we're going to be talking about. Like, it talks about this kind of middle position, and it kind of sets up this sort of non-dual perspective. It talks about how you can take a huge cosmic perspective and say everything is good, even the suffering, even the terrible bits, because it's part of the process. And also, because I'm in the process, I'm going to take part in it and try to make it better. But at the same time, I'm not going to make the perfect the enemy of the good, or think that because it's not totally perfect that life isn't good. Life is good just because it is, and it's nice to be able to have projects to figure out how to make it better. And I also like how he sets up sort of the similarities and the differences between Christianity and Buddhism, a couple of the main traditions, and he talks about the idea of the going and the return to the garden, nature versus transcendence, and these kinds of ideas that have come up around that in the East and the West. Yeah, it's interesting. He puts a lot of stuff on the table.
He also made this distinction that in the Western Christianity, the nature seemed to be a lot more like evilish, and the Eastern nature was seen as a good thing. So there are some interesting distinctions between each religious paths, if you will.
But I think that's in part because in the mythology in the West, God is like outside of the world, and he creates the world from the outside. Whereas in the East, God awakes as the world. But I think that we'll find is there is some escapism on both sides as well. It's not just that the Eastern traditions are all about loving and accepting nature, and then the Western traditions are all about demonizing nature. I think that we see that both themes can happen in both traditions, and so it'll be interesting to explore that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think maybe a lot of Western New Agers romanticize Eastern religion like Hinduism and Buddhism, but I had some experience with people on the right side of the globe, and it's not a pretty picture. Even in terms of sexuality, it's still quite constrained. I think sexuality should be one thing that should be probably the most distinct between Christianity and Hinduism, and it probably is, but it's still quite rigid even in Eastern traditions based on what I've seen myself. Not everything is perfect in Buddhism or Hinduism, and everything can be taken out of context or interpreted in a way that's not healthy, and that happens to all traditions, so there's no perfect tradition.
Campbell is trying to show us the beauty of other traditions. I don't think that Joseph Campbell has any kind of illusions about the lack of horror involved in the Eastern traditions, because I've heard him talk about it in some of his other talks where he talks about the traditions of Hinduism and Buddhism. In this particular episode, we get the story of Indra, and so we'll come back around to that, but he sets it up as something that we can take into account the poetic value of it and apply it to our life, to play our part and see ourselves in the light of this bigger picture where we're not too prideful and we're not too humble, but we play our part. Also, like you're saying, if you understand it in the context of the tradition, all the Hindu mythology, the moral of the story is play your part. And this becomes horrible in a lot of ways. They're a tradition that's kind of stuck in the past because they demonize ego. They try to make everyone play their part. They don't even show individuals in their art. They only show types: merchant type, princely type, warrior type, the untouchable caste.
Their caste system is extremely rigid, and you're basically born with it. There's not much you can do. I think you can like marry maybe a higher caste. There are, I think, some workarounds, but in general, yeah, you're basically defined by birth based on which caste. It's quite rigid kind of thing, yeah.
And it's racist too, because the people in the higher caste are the conquering caste. And so they set themselves up on top of the pyramid, and then they use the idea of reincarnation and karma to justify why you're in the lower caste. Like, well, maybe if you're good in this life and accept your role and do your duty and do what you're told, and maybe in your next life you'll be good like me.
And ironically, that's happening the same with New Agey Western variations as well, although they don't use the caste system. But if you have like a Western deluded spiritual teacher, he'll just say, well, you know, the reason you got cancer is because you attracted it to yourself, or you were bad in past life, or probably some combination of all those things, or you got cancer so your soul learns something. It's quite horrifying.
This video, like all the videos, starts with taste, or like a microcosm of what the whole video is going to be. And this one in particular starts by kind of just throwing you into a bunch of different creation myths.
In the beginning, there was only darkness everywhere, darkness and water.
Which I think is supposed to jar a person and help them to realize that the Bible is just another simple sounding story like all the rest, and that all traditions have these simple sounding stories and they all sound kind of the same. I think what Joseph Campbell is trying to say is the thing that we should be getting out of these creation myths is this understanding that I am that creative power that started this process off, and identifying with the creative aspect inherent in nature, which is also inherent in us.
This story that we've just read, I see that I am this creation, says the God. When you see that God says he is the creation, and then you are a creature, well, the God is within you, and the man you're talking to also. And so there's that realization, two aspects of the one divinity.
If we look at the Western and Eastern religion, and obviously see pros and cons, I think, again, it's always seeking balance. So how to be part of the process and being indulged in everyday life, whatever that means for anybody, but also have that higher perspective. So again, it's like when Cohen said being and becoming. You have some Western people who think that the real enlightenment is only if you go to Himalayas and meditate for 3 months or whatever. Now, I'm not saying that's not useful, but some people think that that's the only way. So all life is basically just trying to meditate and become enlightened. But that's not the point, because as we can see, is happening is people become dissociated with life. So you can use Eastern spirituality to run away from reality, basically. And a lot of New Agey tradition does seem to do that a lot. So it's not like I'm this monkey in a body. We are the cosmos, but we are monkeys. We are the cosmos. It's more like I'm a special person and I have a soul. And I think that's childish kind of spirituality if you don't understand it in context or in metaphor, if you will, and not take it literally. And he made that specific distinction today, so that's good. Yeah, but we're gonna come to that, yeah. I'm sorry if I went too far.
I think what you're talking about when you say this kind of spirituality, like you don't need to go up onto a mountaintop, like these things are available to everybody. I think also where Joseph Campbell is kind of talking about this, how different myths are like guide signs or like a way to get in touch with this deeper thing. What Campbell would say is that you don't need that one tradition or that one symbol set, that actually there are many ways to potentially get in touch with this realization and to live it out in your life, and many different ways of talking about it.
Yeah, even that guy asked him, what if I don't even want to read about myths? And Campbell said that you don't have to if you don't want to.
He's like, if you're having a good life already, that's
I was
good.
surprised by that answer, because I was thinking he would say, no, you need this. But he actually said, no, you don't need it if you don't want it. So a kind of interesting response from Campbell, since this is his life work. Usually people are quite attached to their stuff, and I appreciate his kind of humbleness. You don't need it, right? Whatever works for you.
The next answer that he gives, where Bill Moyers is asking him about meaning, right? And he says that but it's not really the meaning that we want. But the meaning is a means to an end for us to have this experience of rapture, of fully being alive and living in accord with nature and with our true self. So to him, the ultimate point is not to have some kind of an answer, but to be fully experiencing life. And I think that makes a lot of sense, especially from a developmental perspective. The goal is not to be at a certain stage of development or to have a certain answer, but to be living a life that feels full and in accord with your nature and the environment. I think that is a great answer. He says, what's the meaning of a flower? What's the meaning of a flea? He's talking about this, how we get so caught up in trying to find outer values that we miss the inner value of just being alive and experiencing life.
I can understand where he's coming from, because everything we have is this moment. So the eternity or the universe is only here and now, at least from our subjective human perspective. And that's actually objectively true. The most one can do is try to be indulged in each moment and try to live as deeply as he can within the given circumstance, because that's all you have and that's it.
I think what he goes on to explain in these next few ideas that he sets out is really this kind of non-dual perspective. I don't often think about what third tier is, beyond turquoise, the unitive self, indigo, or whatever it is. But if you look at some of the explanations of what it says up there, it says things like realization as a verb, not as a destination, which is kind of what he's describing here. And it also says action and non-action simultaneously without attachment to outcome. He kind of describes this a little bit later when he talks about the bodhisattva, this kind of idea of being rooted in this cosmocentric perspective where you say yes to all of life, but you also participate in the game, in the drama, in the action, in a way where, of course, we care about trying to make the world better, but we also know that to live is to suffer, that everyone dies, and it's great to be here.
I think Bill attacked him. One could then argue, if you just accept everything, then why change anything, right? And I think Joseph corrected him quite well here. So, and we come back to the idea of, yeah, okay, everybody's gonna suffer and we need to accept it, but we should also try to change it and make it a better place. That doesn't mean that we become like, well, it is what it is and not try to do anything. We need to do our best to make a world a better place. Even though we also need to accept that world can be shitty, and it's gonna be more and more shittier the older you get, and you either deal with reality or you're gonna suffer immensely. So I think a lot of it is just us trying to, okay, this is unconsciousness in this body, whatever, how can I do my best to make a world a better place?
He pushes us into the extreme cosmocentric perspective to really give people the radical shock of it, because probably so many people are so very caught up in dualistic thinking, the thinking of like, oh, be on the side of the good versus the evil, and they're so caught up in this dualistic Western good versus evil kind of thing that he's trying to show them the benefit of this Eastern perspective, this kind of radical perspective, just appreciating being here now and the fact that we exist and that life is even happening. And yeah, of course there's going to be pain and suffering. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to decrease it. I like how he says we participate in it. We all live in this capitalist system. This iPhone that we're talking about this on right now was probably made with some kind of slave labor, or at least the elements in it that go to make it up are rooted in suffering. Sure, we're trying to do good things with the technology, but we do participate in it. We drive cars. We are all literally
Yeah, I mean,
destroying the sacred feminine just by being here. This is what Schopenhauer is talking about too, where he's saying that life is something that should not have been, right? That life is evil all the time in terms of living by killing and eating. Life itself is this kind of terrible, sinful, horrible thing from the more Christian perspective.
well, I can see where he's coming from, yeah. From a Christian perspective, it is like a living hell if you think about it.
Campbell is saying that he thinks it's kind of childish to say no to life with all of its pain. And he says it's interesting that we end up blaming the woman and the snake because the woman brings us into life with all of this pain and duality. And the snake is a representation of life because it has to do with rebirth, like shedding your skin and being born again like the moon sheds its shadow. So these are representations of nature. And so to demonize them is to demonize life and to demonize the fact that we even have to be be here. And it's interesting that in the Bible, the idea is that a woman comes from man, that she's like taken from a man's rib. In their origin story, women come from men. It's not that men come from women. This again is kind of like a metaphorical way of saying that the absolute transcendent masculine aspect is primary. It's this idealistic theme, is the masculine theme, the transcendent theme. And as emergentists, you know, from our perspective of cosmology, it's actually woman that's primary. I mean, you could say that maybe from an emergentist point of view, the transcendent masculine is like the E in E equals MC squared, the energy that becomes matter. I mean, the poetry can still work from that kind of perspective. Definitely, there seems to be a theme of demonizing the feminine and putting it down and trying to say that life and nature is somehow evil and fallen, something to be corrected. And that is nice to think about how some cultures like Japan and in some of the Eastern traditions, their focus is on trying to beautify nature, trying to take those natural impulses and make them sacred. Joseph Campbell would give this example of like a priest. And so a priest doesn't have any natural God glorified ways to express his sexuality. And so because it's repressed and hidden, that the only way that it can come out is in some kind of secret, evil, fucked up way where he's finally giving attention to this repressed emotion that he has. But if he had some kind of God glorified way to make his sexual impulses sacred, then he could be able to validate his nature. I think that this is a super important aspect of myth, is like, what kind of relationship does it give us to our own nature and to the environment and to each other?
And I think sexuality is probably one of the main sort of, if you want to look how people see nature, just look at their sex life. I do think that younger people do seem like people who were born in, let's say, 2000s, who are now, they seem to be more sexually open because they don't have that religious dogma that we had. So I think it is getting kind of better.
The forbidden fruit.
They're taking that fruit and eating it too.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Seeds and all.
And you can see quite drastic differences. And they also seem, I mean, the ones who are in somewhat healthy environment, they seem to be a lot more psychologically healthy than the older generations. Because again, there's no this Christian repressed dogma attached.
Yeah.
And we see what happens if you demonize nature and especially sexuality. We know the Catholic scandals and so on. So yeah, we definitely want to stay away from that and embrace the feminine in her glory.
Yeah, and it's interesting that forbidden fruit is like the knowledge of good and evil, the knowledge of the opposites. But in biblical terms, to say that he knew her or something like that, that's like the metaphor for sex. To like know somebody is to like, girl, I want to get to know you. Yeah, so that's interesting, like the demonization of both knowledge and sexuality. And this really is adolescence. And this is the setting up of the garden. So the garden of unity is where I and the Father are one, where God and nature are one. We could look at it developmentally for individuals and for the society. Back when we're in the family life as individuals, or when we were still just another animal, that's kind of like we're still one with nature. We're still in it. Maybe there's a over-glorification of that time in the garden when we were just animals and we didn't have this knowledge that separated us from each other. I'm sure life was still, as Hobbes says, short, brutish, and nasty. You know what I mean? I can't even imagine having to live outside, catching other animals to eat or whatever you have to do as an animal to survive. The cycle is that then you get thrown into reality, born into this world where you realize, oh crap, I'm separate and I have all of these desires and these urges. And then you have to get to this point to where you deal with the temptations of the world. And this is what we were talking about last time with the Christian and Buddhist temptations. You get thrown into this world where you're separate from God and you're in the world of temptation. And then you have to deal with all these temptations. And then hopefully on the other side of that, and I think we'll talk about this more in the next episode, but there's the return to the garden eventually, where you have Buddha under his tree or Jesus on his tree. This is the second tree in the garden, the tree of everlasting life, that infinity, the eternity right here and now, where you're not moved by all these other things, where I and the Father are one. That's the return to the garden, not just as Joseph Campbell talk about the pre-trans fallacy in terms of pre-rational and trans-rational, but here he's also making a distinction about pre-egoic, egoic, and trans-egoic or transpersonal, the different stages of relating to the personal line and developing as a self. There are those lines in the story of the garden where it's like, we have to kick them out of the garden so that way they're not like us. Because if they eat of the other tree of the garden, then they'll be like us. So it's like mom and dad have to kick you out of the nest so that way you can learn to fly, and then maybe you'll make it back. Something like that. Joseph Campbell says it's first leaving the garden that is the beginning of our life. Let's go back a little bit. So Joseph Campbell defines God, the transcendent, but when he defines it like this, he does it in the context of beyond all categories of human thought. So when he's saying that the absolute mystery is transcendent, he's saying it's a mystery transcendent of our ability to be able to imagine, contemplate, or talk about. He's not talking about something supernatural.
And he also mentions something you did in your epistemology video, the problem with the relative nature of language.
Right, exactly.
So whatever word we put on something, you already missed the point, because the complexity of cosmos and our very limited subjective space that everybody is living in is way too simplistic for us to understand the reality in itself. So he makes that important point that if God is anything, whatever it is, we can't really say anything because the language is way too simplistic.
Right.
And it's just embracing the mystery of not knowing, or maybe you would say embracing the void. And that's what he means by God. He doesn't literally mean like some being, or in New Age probably people think, oh, he means aliens or whatever. Yeah, I mean, in New Age, you know how it is, right?
I know.
He's basically saying embracing the unknowing and just try to be calm with it without knowing what's on the other side. Because if you think about it, a lot of New Age and also religions in general, they were made, I mean, there are a million reasons why they were made, but one of the main ones was what happens after you die. So all of these either New Age ideas or the traditional ideas, so you have the karma system, the heaven in the Christianity, new karma system 2.0 in the New Age tradition, and they're all there to say, hey, this is not over, this is just part of it. So again, it's running away from reality. And for me, the way I interpret what he was saying is exactly, let's not make shit up and let's just embrace what is. Let's embrace the fact that we don't know.
Right.
And it seems like it's extremely hard to do that. You know, we need to pretend that we know karma exists. We need to pretend to know that soul exists. And even Bill said, you know, now that science came along, a lot of those myths, at the beginning we thought that the world was like a 3-layer cake, right? So you have the heaven, the earth, and the hell. And now science just basically demolished those myths, and now new myths need to be created. And I also think that what we're doing here, we are actually part of the process of creating new myths for next generations. I think this is what Integral Review here, this episode, are in a way. How can we can we have the knowledge that we have and create new myths for the younger generation?
I think that's right. So not only does he talk about the functions of myth and say that we need new myths and new role models that will be reflections of our time and our environment, but he says that the reason why we don't have new myths, or the reason why we don't have a new tradition so far, is because our cosmology, our understanding of what's going on in reality was changing so much.
Way too fast.
But I actually think, correct me if you think I'm wrong about this, but I actually think that now we do have a lot more solid of a cosmology. And maybe since the 80s to now, things have changed a lot, and I'm sure that they will change more. But I think we are closer to having a more solid cosmology. I don't see science drastically changing its perspective on things anytime soon. What do you think about that?
That's a tough speculation, because we don't know what would happen if, let's say, it would be a slap in the face, or maybe not, if you realize we lived in simulation. I think that simulation theory could be quite valid, but
how would we ever prove that, though?
Yeah, that's a problem. How would World of Warcraft characters in the game, do they know they're in simulation? Probably not. Yeah, searching for bugs,
maybe,
but that
there's a
help.
Place where someone's in a corner just like
Yeah, no, the problem with the bug theory is that if any kind of civilization made this reality, they would probably make it so that the AI in the reality we live in would also fix the bugs by itself. So even if bugs occur, they would be so rare that it would be impossible for us to see it. So searching for bugs, it's a tough one. Yeah, whoever made the universe was a sneaky little bastard.
If you have
but also extremely smart.
a video of someone stuck in a wall somewhere just twitching and glitching, please send us. Post it below.
Yeah, and not in a video game because you have a lot of those, but like a real one.
Well, the good thing about what Joseph
it's
Campbell is
interesting.
talking about here is that he's a hard agnostic. So he's not making claims. Everything that he's saying is compatible with simulated universe. Like we could be very well in a simulated universe, and this Joseph Campbell stuff that we're talking about could still be true.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a mystery, and I would consider myself an agnostic as well because I can't prove God doesn't exist, although there are more than enough reason to think it doesn't, at least not in a form that literal Christians present.
Right.
And I want to point this out because you're getting accused, that you're a materialist. I don't think you actually are a materialist. That's the problem here.
No.
Because people who say, oh, you guys are just materialists, they forget that material, it's a useful word for us to understand solid stuff and nature. So you can't be materialist even if you wanted to be. It's impossible.
No.
Because everything is energy.
Right.
And so we are not materialists, but we are also not like idealistic new agey people who take some parts of Hinduism, some parts of, Christianity, put it together and make a new age theory. We're just trying to practice embracing the mystery and just not jump to conclusions about karma or souls or whatever. And like Sam Harris said, maybe at some point when neuroscience gets better, maybe we'll realize, oh, souls do exist and they are in this part of the brain or whatever. It's extremely unlikely, but we are open to these ideas. But based on the knowledge of cosmology we have, we need to admit that most of it doesn't seem likely to be true, unfortunately. But that doesn't make us materialists. It just makes us someone who have the courage to admit, hey, we don't know and we're not pretending to.
Right.
And that's it. Nothing more than that.
I think that's really well
so
put,
I want
man.
to point this out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the materialism thing is definitely a straw man. What we try to do is we want to have the best understanding possible. We're not starting from any kind of assumptions and working backwards from them. In fact, I think part of really trying to honor the Western Enlightenment project is to start from nothing and to see what you can actually know and build. So I think it even starts with something like Descartes, where he says, I think, therefore I am. Like, I know that my consciousness exists, right? We can know that. Then maybe the next thing was the problem of other minds. Like, are you real? And the fact that I had to learn language, that other cultures exist, things like that. I think those are good evidence for other people being out there. And so then if I don't even trust my own perspective and experience, that's where like things like falsifiability and peer review and tests come in. And then we can start to build together and say, oh, we know this, we know this, we know this. We shouldn't really be making claims beyond our ability to know. That's where a lot of people go wrong. They do just the opposite. They start from something that they'd like to be true and then go around looking for evidence, trying to prove that thing right. What they really should be doing is trying to prove it wrong to see if it stands up.
Ironically, all those the same people still use technology. And the reason technology evolved is because people tested it a million ways and one of them worked. And that's how we have technology. If they didn't, let's say you're an engineer and you went to create an iPhone and you say, well, I'm just gonna use the universe and the universe is gonna tell me how to make an iPhone. Well, they'll just kick you out because you're irrelevant. You don't understand the scientific method. So for all people who claim to know things about cosmos that are impossible to know, then I assume they would probably need to stop using technology as well, because technology was made from the same peer review, testing, failing process, so we can have this conversation right now. And if you just make some vague cosmological claims like, I know karma exists and the reason you're poor is because law of attraction doesn't work for you because you don't really want it, well, making such stupid claims, it doesn't work. Then you should stop and not use technology at all, because you're dismissing the whole material world.
Right. And the reason that technology works, it proves some of the fundamental assumptions of science, that we live in a shared reality that works how it works regardless of personal belief. There wouldn't be able to be iPhones or computers that work the same way for everyone everywhere if we lived in a world where you could just decide not to believe in something and then it wouldn't be true anymore. That's not how things work. And the fact that technology and science works proves that. To take the Christian metaphor, building our house on the rock, building it on something solid like science, as opposed to rooting our ideas in belief and watching it get washed away.
Yeah, and I want to point out, because I already have arguments from some New Agers, that doesn't mean that we're saying don't listen to your inner world, or this inner world is not important, because then people think, well, if you're just a materialist, then you're basically like living half of life. You don't see the importance of psyche. And what we're actually just saying is it's important to listen to yourself and your heart and whatever. It's useful for understanding your own psyche, but it's not useful for understanding the objective reality, right? No amount of meditation is going to show you how to create an iPhone. You need to go to engineering school and you need to learn how to make iPhone, but you can get valuable insights about your psyche going on Himalaya and meditate for 3 months. So nobody's denying the importance of inner life. It's just not projecting your inner life and experience to outside world. That's all we're saying. We're not saying just ignore your inner life. I think that's super important, because again, people think that you're just a materialist, then they might also think that you're just saying, well, ignore your inner life, it's not important. It's just objective world is important.
Well, here we are talking about Joseph Campbell and the importance of inner symbolism and what that can tell us about what it is to be a human and our interior reality. Well, it's very interesting because it's important to have what I call the cup and the sword, these kind of two tools that we should have as integralists. The sword is rationality and logic, and it helps us to figure out what's actually true, what's literal, what's factual, what's actual.
While also knowing that we're most likely never gonna find the real truth.
The cup is embedded in the sword, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, because the sword itself, like rationality and logic and stuff like that, is just poetry, right? But then also the poetry makes sense. It's rational. It has a point. When you read The Tortoise and the Hare, if you understand what the point of what the story is trying to tell you, it makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense, it's not good poetry. It's just a jumble mishmash of words that don't mean anything. The cup and the sword are related. They need each other, but they're also kind of opposites. It's the yin and the yang, the dark element and the white circle and the white element and the black circle. They complement each other, but they're opposites. Definitely, we want to understand these symbols in the context of a true understanding of the world that we live in. But also, I think the good thing about what Joseph Campbell is asking us to do when he's talking about living in the poetry and being the hero, living in this kind of poetic way, is to embody the best parts of the poetic aspects of these characters, to see life in this kind of poetic way, and to understand symbol literacy, because all we have are symbols to trade with each other. All we have are these parts to play out, to act for each other. And so we should act skillfully.
Stories that we have through all religions are useful pointers or ideas to how to live a life. And yeah, we shouldn't discard everything. Of course, there are some things we should discard. Maybe slavery is not something we really need to find a metaphorical understanding, but there are a lot of stories in any religion that could be useful in our everyday life. So the idea is how to use the today's knowledge, which is mostly rationally scientific, but through that rational perspective, still find some useful bits from each culture.
Yeah.
Because every culture can only interpret each religion based on the knowledge it has at that time.
Right.
So the peak knowledge will interpret the lower knowledge. So the peak knowledge at this moment is rationality. Maybe in the future it's going to be something we can't even imagine. But at this point in time, our peak knowledge can interpret the lower, quote unquote, lower knowledge and see, okay, this is useful, this is useful, this is useful. Okay, slavery, we can discard that. Okay, stoning, we can discard that.
Yeah.
It's like skillful findings, integration of useful things.
Yeah.
It's super important to know how to read the symbols. Like you said, not connotation, but denotation, or the other way around.
That's reading a metaphor in terms of the denotation instead of in terms of the connotation. You understand that? It's a purely literary problem. That's reading it in terms of prose instead of in terms of poetry.
And he said also in there, he's like, every mythology is true in the time in which it's written. So he's like, basically you have to find the truth in there and then divorce it from its particular cultural hang-ups of the time. Like, and he kind of demonstrates how to do this when he talks about Indra. He's saying, okay, here's this story of Indra. And yeah, I mean, if you want to read it in terms of the cultural context of of the time and see how it's got the oppressive cultural side, you can definitely see that. But if you can kind of put that to the side and think about it in terms of how we live our life today, is there still something poetic that we can get out of it? Yeah, and I think there is, this cosmocentric perspective, and also this, like he says, we're kind of all the Indra of our own life, that we are just this thing in flux. And what we really should be doing is not to humble ourselves too much or to be super prideful of ourselves, but to figure out what's authentic to us and play our part. And when we think about what's authentic to us and play our part, that's clearly the Western influence, the Western way of reading that story and getting something good out of it in a way that is contextually good for us. But it's not necessarily the reading of it in context. But the truth is still in there. There's still something good in there about it. And it is. He talks about identifying with a creative principle. And he says the myth helps us to see all life as sacred. And then he basically talks about God in first, second, and third person perspectives. He talks about namaste, about recognizing the divine principle in the other, and how when you go to an Indian household that they treat you like a visiting deity. So this
Yeah, especially if you're white.
got that pretty white skin. And he talks about I amness, and he also talks about seeing God in the environment. So the I amness is like the I am a manifestation of this creative principle. I recognize that you are a manifestation of this creative principle, and the creative principle is manifest in the whole of nature. So this is that integral first, second, and third person versions of God, and really being in it and seeing it everywhere. And this is the poetry of seeing life as sacred. And I think that's healthy agnostic form of spirituality, is just this kind of seeing life as sacred. And of course we could talk about it in the poetry of all of these traditions, but I think it's also important that we are able to talk about it just in plain terms. I choose to see life as sacred. This isn't a truth claim about the nature of reality, like I'm saying that it certainly is sacred and it's a fact. I'm saying it's an attitude. It's like a way of deciding to live in relationship to the world. And I think it's a healthy attitude. Like, this is kind of what he's saying about, as opposed to having this kind of nihilistic view, like, what's the point? One time I heard him talk about, imagine if after you mowed the grass was just like, we just keep getting cut down. What's the point? And just stopped growing or whatever. I think that's basically what he's advocating for, is appreciating the poetry and what it has to say about us as humans, and how it can help us to see our life as sacred and live in the rapture of being our authentic self.
And obviously the advancement of science made us realize just how, I mean, not only it's sacred, but it's also a lot more complex than we could ever imagine. And I think that complexity also gives it even more sacredness than just saying, oh, it's a 3-layered cake,
right?
What they usually did at the beginning. So now that we advance so much as civilization, we can see, holy shit, this is even more sacred than we could possibly imagine.
Right.
Because it's so complex. Even if you're studying integral and you are the leading edge, even at that level, you still see just how little or how weak our language really is compared to complexity of reality. So even if you're like integrally informed, you know more than most people, or at least know more distinctions than most people. But at the same time, you actually realize that even with integral knowledge, you still don't know all that much. Again, our language is so simplistic, and it's the only tool, unfortunately, that we have, and we need to accept that and try to live, like you said, within this complexity. We need to live with the acceptance of reality and try to be the most truthful that we can to ourselves within any kind of situation one finds himself in. That's all we can do at the end of the day. That's it. And then you die.
Yeah, that's one of the things that really attracted me to it, especially after coming out of a religious tradition. Somebody finally was talking about mystery in a humble kind of way, like being in touch with mystery. And for Joseph Campbell, when he talks about the functions of myth, for him, the first function is the mystical function, which is to get a person in touch with the mystery of reality, which is also your mystery. So that's that realizing the creativity of nature within yourself, but also in a humble way to get you in touch with mystery. There's a great talk called Neil deGrasse Tyson gives his best sermon ever.
It's not simply that we're in the universe, but in fact, given the chemistry of it all and the nuclear physics of it all, not only are we in the universe is in us. And I don't know any deeper spiritual feeling than what that brings upon me.
He talks about basically science as a mystery tradition.
I wanted to become an astrophysicist not because I chose it. In a way, the universe chose me. That first day in the Hayden Planetarium at age 9, and I looked up and the lights dimmed and the stars came out. And I was called by the universe. I became a student of the universe with the ambition of one day being one of its participants in research on the frontier of cosmic discovery. And that ambition stayed with me the whole time. You would go on pilgrimages to mountaintops because that's where your telescopes are. The best telescopic observing sites are far removed from civilization. The day is now your night, and the night is your day. That's part of the pilgrimage. The effort of the travel is the effort of flipping your schedule and going nocturnal. Then there's the telescope itself, this conduit to the cosmos. It's a tube, and I sit there and I reflect on it. And so I have my digital detectors, I've got the telescope, it's dark, it's just me on this mountain and the universe. There's the knowledge and the feeling that I'm reaching out to the universe with these methods and tools of science. And then add to that the sum of 20th century knowledge about the origin of the chemical elements. They were forged in the centers of high-mass stars that went unstable, they exploded, scattered their enriched contents across the galaxy, sprinkled into gas clouds that then collapsed and formed stars and planets and life. These ideas, these cosmic perspectives, this pilgrimage to the cosmos. There are people who say, this makes me feel small because I need to see the immensity of the cosmos. And I say, no, you're not thinking about it the right way. The problem was his ego was too large to begin with, destabilized his self-image. Whereas I know that the molecules in my body are traceable to phenomena in the cosmos. It's quite literally true that we are stardust in the highest exalted way. And it's our 15 pounds of gray matter that figured this out. I use words, compose sentences that sound like the sentences I hear out of people who had revelations of Jesus, who go on their pilgrimages to Mecca.
This is science as a mystery tradition, and this is a seeker of cosmic mystery, and just as much as a seeker as you would have in Buddhism or Christianity or paganism. Like, this is a seeker and a practitioner who's trying to use his tradition to get in touch with the absolute mystery of the cosmos, which is also his mystery. It can be realized through a lot of different traditions, and that's like the first. Awe is the hallmark of the religious experience, that, whoa, getting your mind blown by cosmic hugeness. That's the start of it, and realizing that you're one with this huge mystery that is everything. That's super important, if not the most important functions of the religion or of symbolism.
Because a lot of people tend to see science more just like a niche that's trying to destroy all the other religions. That's at least how usually religious people see it. But I think it's another way to look at it, is just another mystic view, if you will. Just another tradition.
Yeah.
Of course, it's obviously the most accurate, at least based on the technology and everything it produces. So I don't want to take it away and say, well, Christianity is just as accurate. Well, it's not.
Right.
At least not in a kind of objective results.
Right. Its stories aren't as accurate. The myths aren't as accurate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's healthy to look at science as just another kind of newer mystic tradition that's obviously more accurate in terms of creating objective reality and understanding it, but still just another mystic tradition. And maybe in the future, maybe something beyond science will occur, or maybe like a new advanced science, and the science we have now will be looked as like a lower kind of mystic tradition. Just like science maybe looks at a religion as maybe like a lower part of, maybe a lower mystic tradition, if you will. I'm not trying to insult by saying lower, but at least in terms of accuracy. But like I said, it still is super useful in terms of psychological understanding of yourself and the world.
It's interesting when he talks about religions as different types of software, and how for most people they got to be careful because if they get their symbols crossed, they could just get confused. But he, since he has this method, is able to be more of a maverick. It's interesting to think about this because basically what it is to be integral is to be able to run lots of different software on our integral operating system in a way where they harmonize with each other. And for me, like, coming across Joseph Campbell was my first hint at what this kind of integration would look like. But I definitely see that a lot of postmodernists, they do have their wires majorly crossed and there's a lot of symbolic confusion and a lot of different ways that they go wrong, creating all of these far-sighted mishmashings, like where they're taking a bunch of different word games from different traditions and getting all kinds of confused. Like, a great example is you can take the observer effect from quantum physics and this idea of the observer from Buddhism. And the observer, they both sound the same. And so the idea is that it's the observer that collapses the wave function. Then you get this kind of hybrid idea that has nothing to do with Buddhism and nothing to do with quantum physics, that you can affect reality by thinking about it and like create things. So you get these kind of new hybrid clusterfuck mishmashes by cramming symbols together from different things that don't go together.
Yeah, that would be something, yeah, we could call it unskillful mishmash. Yeah, and also like the idea of higher and lower frequencies. You know, if you have positive thoughts, then positive thoughts have higher frequencies, and therefore the cosmos is going to send you positive happenings to your life, whatever.
Yeah.
Something Deepak Chopra would say. He's like a poster child for those things. And yeah, I think it should be, for somebody who's in New Age, should be extremely careful to notice these things, because these are just some unskillful integrations from people who don't have either critical thinking, scientific thinking, and also philosophical thinking, and also integral thinking.
Right.
At the end of the day, right? Like you constantly say, what makes somebody integral is not just pointing out integral things, because every idiot can read spiral dynamics, for instance, and say, well, he's somewhat orange and he's somewhat green. Every idiot can do that, but what makes somebody integral is the distinctions. Those are important things. So understanding subjective, objective world,
Right.
pre-trans, post-trans fallacies and stuff like that. This is what makes you integral, not just, oh, you're green and I know that, therefore I'm integral. No,
Right.
Not so easy.
Not just including a bunch of things, but including them in a way where they harmonize with each other. The postmodernists, they just go up to the buffet of religion and they're like, I'll take a little bit of heaven and a little bit of reincarnation, and this is fun. I like this. And it's just like, none of these ideas go together. How are you holding these ideas in a way where they're consistent with each other in the same worldview? I definitely have met people who have talked about like, oh, they're all saying the same thing, but it seems like at the end of the day, they want to try to collapse all mountaintops into their preferred mountaintop and just be like, oh, all the religions are saying what I wanted to say. Or they're just oblivious to the fact that they don't go together and that they don't have a consistent worldview, and that's fine. They'll say different things depending on what feels right in the moment, I guess.
The postmodern spiritual kind of circles, it's this laziness. And they also then say, well, you know, mind is evil, intellect is evil, you gotta listen with your heart. So it's another like bypass of intellectuality. All you have is your intellect to understand the world, so denying that part. But they use this in a way like you're judging things, so you don't really understand them. I mean, come on, give me a break.
Right.
And by the way, by saying that you're judging, that non-judgment is better, which means you already destroyed your own argument here.
Right.
But
judging people for judging
so
people.
Stupid. Yeah, you cannot not judge. That's my
Making
point.
the judgment
You know,
that
even if you
judgments
say-
are bad and all that.
Because you get that a lot, you know, you get like, well, you won't really understand it because you're judging it. You gotta feel it. And there's some poetic truth to that, but at the end of the day, if you want to understand reality, you gotta judge it. There are like routines for being intellectually lazy and not really think about stuff, right? Like you said, they're going to this buffet and they say, well, I like the souls, I like the reincarnation, I like the heaven, I don't like hell, I don't like cancer, I don't like this. You gotta take it all, man. That's the point. You gotta take it all. You gotta take the cancer and you gotta take the heaven, not just one or the other.
Yeah, and we should put all these things to scrutiny and say, prove it. And if they can't prove it, then we shouldn't be holding it with any kind of certainty. I think it's fine to be curious if something is true or not and to not know. But when you start thinking that you know things that you don't actually know, that's when you get into trouble. What I wanted to point out was there was this part in this video where Joseph Campbell is making this point about absolute big picture acceptance. Accept everything. Say yes to everything in life. That does resonate with Green. He says that people need their own tradition, 100%. Don't judge, open up, right? I think what he's talking about is more and more people need to get in touch with this kind of absolute cosmic perspective and allow for that compassion and the recognition of the absolute of that creative principle in the other. We spend so much time fighting with other people when we should really be using our religious traditions not as a way to be self-righteous as holes and think that we're so much better than other people, but as a way to allow us to get in touch with that heart space and to be able to connect better with other people.
Other people who are prepared for that connection. Because I think there's another extreme, then you can go, what you're saying is beautiful, but if you have somebody who firmly believes that you should be killed for whatever reason, then you're not gonna make that connection. So I think it's like a practice of seeing God in another person or seeing the mystery, but also at the same time realize, okay, this is just one dude who could be brainwashed and he's gonna kill me.
Yeah.
So you don't wanna, because the New Agers over romanticize other religions. They just think, oh, at some point, like the spiritual singularity we talked, I think, on psychedelic podcast, it's not gonna happen. So you can see, what I'm trying to say, you can see God or mystery in somebody and still kill them if necessary. That's my point. I'm not advocating for that, but I'm just saying there are situations when you can see God, but you can still need to kill it because that person could be dangerous.
No, I totally agree. This is one of the things that I think all of us spiritual people have had to deal with, and there have been, I would say, a bunch of different ideas. Back in the day, Jesus is talking about turn the other cheek how many times? 70 times 7. Like, keep letting your brother smack the shit out of you and just keep taking it. I love you, no matter what you do to me. It turns people into doormats. I really like Aleister Crowley, the guy who wrote the Book of the Law, the more pagan way of dealing with this, where he says, love is the law, love under will, every man and woman is a star.
The main precept of the occult tradition of Thelema is, quote, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. This precept is far too often completely misunderstood and completely taken out of context. Used properly, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law refers to the Thelemic concept of the true will. The true will represents a human being's true purpose and path in life, which exists in harmony with the will of the universe. This is the path upon which we are guided when we have learned to hear and follow the teachings of the higher self and natural law. That means we are doing the true will. We have gotten what we want out of the way. We got to get to the great work and start getting it done. That's what the true will really is about. It's not about what I want. It doesn't mean do whatever you want. The Thelemic principle of do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law must remain in context with the statement which follows it. Love is the law. Love is the law. Love under will, which means love must be the foundation of the will.
Basically, his idea is the main thing that you should do is you should love, and you should dedicate your life to this bigger picture, this divine will that you have. And that divine will should be the way that you show your love, mainly in the world.
The great work.
So love is the law, but love under will. When you come across a person in the world who needs help, it's not that you help them or you don't help them no matter what. It's that you don't help them so much that it compromises your ability to achieve your will. Because then you compromised yourself too much. Starts by you honoring yourself and what you're here to do, first and foremost. So you're not going to just sacrifice yourself completely for every single person that you meet, but you're going to do your higher purpose, and that's how you sacrifice yourself and show your love. So I think that's like a more complicated or nuanced way of dealing with this problem of how much do you love other people, or how do you show your love without becoming a doormat, that kind of thing.
There is this danger in the New Age community, the idea that of 100% pacifistic, or just don't take any action at all, just let the opponent beat you, and at some point opponent might realize that, oh, it's all love. It's not gonna happen. Sometimes you need to create barriers. I'm not saying building a wall, of course, that's too far maybe.
Build a wall.
Could there be situation where a wall would be needed? Yeah, 100% sure. So I'm actually agree that there are potential scenarios where wall would be necessary. That doesn't mean it's lack of love. It's just preserving the love, let's say, within one country. Because if you have too many...
You're saying healthy boundaries.
People from healthy boundaries, exactly, yeah.
There's a saying in Vermont where my mom lives, good fences make for good neighbors. I think there's something right about that.
That's a good way of thinking about it, yeah. So again, it's that middle part, not just taking one ideology to extreme. That's all I'm trying to say. And in this case, you can see beauty in people and yet be brutal if that's necessary. And not just be like this super wishy-washy loving kind of person. That won't get you anywhere.
This is what Joseph Campbell is talking about too, where he says, is this a private fight or can anybody join? Like, he's talking about getting involved.
I think he actually said that he would get involved into the army. He like said, "Go fight a war if there would be a war, right? Go fight it."
Yeah, he's basically
Yeah, I think he
saying,
said
I'll
it, yeah.
join these fights if I feel like it's the thing that needs to be done. Yeah, we need to get involved. I think that's really important. So he also talks about the state as the machine, and is it going to serve humanity or crush humanity? He says that as soon as we started to build tools, that's us turning the world to our service. But then eventually it starts to dictate to us, right? And I think about this Fight Club line about the things you own start to own you. I like the idea of the story where they ask the computer if there's a god, and it's like, now there is. So Vishnu is the sleeping god whose dream is the universe. And then out of his navel grows a lotus on which the creator god Brahman sits. And he opens his eyes and a world comes into being. So this is like almost like the Holy Trinity we get in Hinduism, or at least a version of it. There's Vishnu, Brahman, and Krishna. Krishna is the avatar of Vishnu. But since we are all just characters in the mind of the sleeping god Vishnu, we are all avatars of Vishnu. So yeah, you have Vishnu, Brahman, and Krishna, right? So you also have Indra and the ants, right? So Indra is the king of the gods, and he thinks, what a good boy am I, and he's building himself a beautiful palace to celebrate his greatness. The idea is that Indra is so freaking proud of himself, he thinks he's so darn good, that he builds himself this giant mansion. The idea is that he's going to live forever since he's the king of the gods. He's immortal. He's just going to have his carpenter god continue to build him bigger and bigger things. And so he goes and he basically prays to God, and then God sends Krishna to come down and teach him a lesson. And then he has all those ants crawl across the floor. And I really love this part, which is talking about this kind of cosmic, infinite, fractal perspective. Like, well, yeah, there's this kind of recycling of souls, and everybody gets to play out all of these parts. All of these ants used to be the king of the gods. Former Indra's all, is what he says. He laughs when they walk across the floor. Indra's like, why are you laughing? What's funny? And then he says, don't ask unless you're willing to be hurt. This goes back to this idea of the knowledge that gives you this cosmic perspective, staring into the void, glimpsing the big picture. It will destroy your ego. Like Joseph Campbell says, don't seek enlightenment unless you want it so badly that you're like a man whose hair is on fire, wants a pool to jump into. That's how bad you have to want it, because otherwise it's too painful to even look.
It's a nice metaphor for being punched in the face. When you look at it in totality, you're like, oh shit, I'm not that special, and many other things. It can hurt people a lot. Again, that's why I think that a lot of what New Age is doing now is just trying to escape from this brutal reality.
And their message is, you're special. You can have special powers, or you'll have a special relationship with the universe that'll give you magical powers. The real truth, I think the real wisdom is like a wisdom of our ignorance, a wisdom of this deep mystery. This is what Joseph Campbell is helping us to get in touch with here. The message isn't you're special. The message is that you're a part of the universe in flux, and you do bring unique things to the table, but play your part. And he talks about this balance, this middle position where you're not too proud, where you're going to build this giant mansion to glorify your ego, and you're also not so humble. You're going to forget about your whole life and then go meditate your life away, that you're going to stay in the world and you're going to live in a way that's true to the greater good as well as your authentic nature. Play your part. When Joseph Campbell says it, it's not in the light of Hindu caste system, but him talking about honoring your true nature. And he says basically we need to represent the infinite in our own life, and the hero does that in the way of integrity.
This is where I would like draw the line between childish spirituality and mature spirituality. So mature spirituality is something that we advocate in Joseph Campbell, which is exactly what you're saying. It's realizing that you're not special, that you are part of the process, that you are nature itself reincarnated in this body. And I mean metaphorically, not literally. That's the mature spirituality, knowing that fact, not like, oh no, I'm this special person. We talked about this a bit because a lot of people, and I also had a bad childhood, but a lot of people had bad childhood. So I think these spiritual teachers come really handy to these people and say, oh, well, you're special, you had all these experiences happen because you're special and you have a calling and stuff like that. So ironically, I think it even makes a bigger ego instead of letting ego go. In order to be enlightened, I think you also need to know a lot. It's not just about being in a state, right? Both are important, but if you don't have an intellectual operating system to
translate your experience,
in a way, yeah, translate in a mature, rational kind of way, then you're just a childish buffoon. Unfortunately, a lot of New Age spirituality today is just spiritual teachers saying, oh, you're all special, you create your own life, and all those people give thousands upon thousands.
Yeah.
And the same goes with healers. You have healers who say, well, you know, if you come to me, I will help you heal cancer because cancer is just the product of your mindset or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's sad that we live in such a world. Just another danger of New Age spirituality.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, because the kind of spirituality that you and I are talking about is about seeing life and reality and everything just as it is right now as sacred. And what a lot of these spiritually people end up doing is
exactly not that.
Is exactly not that. They wind up dressing up as spiritual and assuming all of these postures that seem spiritual and like trying to look spiritual instead of realizing the spiritual or the beautiful divine nature of everything just as it is. You don't have to dress up your life to make it spiritual.
Says somebody in a colorful shirt.
Well, you know, when I first was coming out of Green, I probably dressed like in all black a lot. Was very plain. It's more lately that I've been turning up the color a little bit and I guess allowing for more personal creative self-expression, not just this kill the ego kind of stuff, be nobody. One of the stories I like to tell is one time when I was really into Buddhism and stuff, I went to a show with my buddy Andrew and I was thinking to myself, okay, today I'm at this show, I'm gonna like let other people do their thing, I'm not gonna like assert myself too much, I'm just kind of gonna step back and go with the flow and just be and kind of shut up, let other people do their thing more and just appreciate what they got going. And I went with my buddy Andrew and he got there and he was like saying what's up to everybody and giving high fives. Like he went straight up to the stage to where the band was and got up on the stage, grabbed the microphone and was like singing along with the band. And I remember being like, well, that's the opposite of what I came to do. But at the same time, he taught me in this moment. He was there and he brought something of value. I mean, he did assert his ego. He was, you know, very comfortable in his ego, but maybe to some extent he had to get over himself to allow himself to be comfortable enough to be able to get on the stage like that and share himself with other people and to make the moment better and more beautiful. And obviously you can't have everybody jumping up on the stage. He's clearly a talented musician in his own right to be able to get up on the stage and contribute like that. I guess my point is that a lot of this Eastern tradition stuff is not only a demonization of the mind, but it's like kill yourself, don't be here, just die and be nothing. But that's so unhealthy. I think we need to figure out how to express ourselves with integrity and to have a healthy ego, not to kill ourselves and shut up and die.
If you're a Western person brought up in a Western kind of culture, doing this kind of things can actually hurt your personality a lot. You can become deluded, and a lot of people in this New Age culture are like totally cut off from their humanity. They're like rigid. And I'm not like the most down-to-earth person myself. I can also be quite rigid, but even compared to them, I'm like super animalistic. It's a shame that, you know, spirituality sort of cuts people from their monkeyness, and monkeyness is okay. It's okay to be a monkey from time to time. We are the cosmos, but we are monkeys. We are the cosmos, but we are monkeys. But we are monkeys. But we are monkeys.
Risky dirt, grew out of the terrain, top of the food chain, guerrilla war deep in my veins, power, pleasure, and pain, always on my brain, Alyosha maintains.
We are monkeys.
Put in work, developing our skills, master ourselves, we come together and build. Let's go.
We are monkeys.
Just one branch on the family
We are
tree,
monkeys.
from the smallest fleet to the
We are the
bourgeoisie.
cosmos. We are the cosmos, but we are monkeys. I think that spirituality needs to go from up back down to the earth, because a lot of it is like transcending, running away, just observing, and that's fine. But also we need now, okay, let's go back to nature in terms of let's study it, let's try to make it better, and let's indulge in the real material world. Let's not just run away in Himalayas and just meditate and try to get out of this world.
It's like the unhealthy parts about Christianity are the demonization of nature. And the last time we talked talked about the right-hand path versus the left-hand path. The right-hand path is going with the tradition, and the left-hand path is when you try to find your own way. But in the Eastern tradition, there's the difference between Hinayana and Mahayana. So a yana is a ferry boat. Buddhism is a vehicle that takes you from the current shore of the world of separateness to the yonder shore of nirvana, of unity. Going back to the idea of the garden of unity, but in the Buddhist tradition. So the yonder shore is nirvana, or is the garden. So there are these two vehicles or ferry boats. There's the Hinayana, which is the little ferry boat, which is the way of going up onto the mount, meditating and counting beads and doing mantras and doing it by yourself alone. And then there's the Mahayana, which is the great ferry boat. And the idea is we're already there. The idea of realizing your Buddha nature is realizing that we're all a manifestation of Buddha nature. So whether you know it or not, you are God. The only thing about being enlightened is that you know it. So on the big ferry boat, the idea is that all the world is already it. You don't need to go up on the mountain to find it or to be alone, that you can find it in your everyday life in the way that you live with other people.
And if going to a mountain can help you realize that, by all means go ahead and go. But like, there's no sacred place. Everything is sacred right now, and there's no special place for that. It's just this moment right now. Enlightenment is not anything special, because I think in the New Age, enlightenment always seems it's like this paramount state of light or whatever. You're still just human doing your stuff, but you're just knowing you are part of the process, that you're being lived by the cosmos.
Yeah.
Other than that, you're just, okay, I'm just another guy doing my stuff. That's all you can do at the end of the day. So this is not like some special state where when you can go in and then the universe is gonna speak to you and nonsense like that. It's just, okay, I am nature, now I need to do my thing.
It's not even
That's
the
it.
peak
That's
of development.
all it is.
It starts to come online at blue, depending on what your tradition is, if it introduces you to that kind of thing, but it won't really come online until green, when you can actually deconstruct the concepts and start to see through your own personal mythology as well as the mythology that your culture tells you, to see through cultural conditioning. All it really is this realization of absolute unity beyond the illusion of separateness, or like what we're saying, the realization that we are the cosmos, that we are this process in flux. That is enlightenment. It doesn't mean that you know everything. It doesn't mean that you can read other people's minds or have magic powers. It's really more like the first step, waking up into your own consciously created life. And it's definitely not the same as having an integrally informed perspective, which is much better, much more mature than just being enlightened. Enlightenment is easy.
And also notice that it takes a lot of studying. In order for somebody to have some integral distinctions, that person needs to read. So it's also not just, I'm very doubtful that if you went to India, for instance, that you would have spiritual teachers who would make distinctions.
Right.
They are great in states, since they're practicing that their whole life, meditating in caves. So nobody's denying their experiences. But those people don't know anything about physics or computing or philosophy or pre-trans fallacies or anything like that.
Their worldview isn't mature. They're wrong about a lot of things, and they're deeply confused, a lot of them. Yeah, like you're saying, they're really good in one area. Maybe they're really good at getting into states. That's horizontal development. Waking up, that's not growing up. That's not stages of cognitive development. That's not, like you're saying, being able to make more and more nuanced distinctions. And it's not even understanding those experiences from a higher, more wise perspective. So they could be both kind of enlightened, but also deeply confused. And I think that's often the case, is that a lot of people who are enlightened don't even understand their enlightenment properly because it's so embedded in the tradition in which they've learned about it. They're deeply stuck in their cultural conditioning.
Because a lot of the students of these people are also not extremely educated. They fall for the traps and they think, well, that spiritual teacher probably knows his shit, right? Because he's been meditating and stuff. No, he doesn't. He's just another human who happened to be, I don't know, meditating, but doesn't make him anything special. He's just some dude. I think for somebody who wants to grow spiritually, you should never blindly follow one spiritual teacher because he got the state of oneness. You can be like in a blissful state 24 hours a day and be total idiot when it comes to science. So people need to understand that. Those spiritual teachers could be useful for helping you get into a certain states, but those teachers are not useful for pretty much anything else.
Yeah.
You need to go to a doctor for a doctor. You need need to go to cosmologists to study cosmology, you need to go to physicists to study physics. Those people don't know shit about any other subject than their state training. So it's important for people to understand that don't over glorify these spiritual teachers. Use them for the value they have, but don't think that they are actually connected with some cosmos and they know this shit on a much deeper level. No, they don't. So don't fall for that. That's what I'm trying to say.
In terms of going back to this idea of specialness, in a lot of myths, there's this idea of you're the one, Neo.
He is the one.
You are the one, you're the one.
But in the context of mythology, and I think we talked about this last time, is like, yeah, you might be the one in this context, in this journey for right now, but the person who's the one right now becomes the master for the next person who's the one. It's not like there's really this one special one. We're all the one. We're all the special one in our own life. We're all the hero of our own life. Part of that is first, yeah, going on our own journey, but then also part of the cycle is to also find other people who are the one and to give them the tools so that way they can go on their journey and be able to slay the monster. And so we're simultaneously doing that. Even this right now is us trying to do that. Pass on the cup and the sword, these tools, to the heroes and the seekers of the next generation so that way they can slay the monster.
Such an information could be extremely useful for somebody who's like following a certain spiritual teacher and maybe following him way too much. So we are giving you tools here to understand, take what's useful, but not over glorify anything. He's just another monkey in a costume.
And it is a costume. They do wear costumes and they give themselves weird superhero names and stuff like that. You know, this is also part of the reason why so many integralists look like such regular people. If you see a lot of integralists when they were at green stages, they all have like long hair and they look like hippies. They all look like gurus and stuff like that. Some of them will even change their name and stuff. You know, like you can look at my old pictures when I was green. I was doing that too. The next stage beyond that is to work your way back towards some kind of a middle. And what you see in a lot of these integralists who look like regular people, the reason that they look like regular people is because we know that we're actors, because we are integrally informed, we're spiral technicians. We have to have a character that works for a lot of people all the way up and down the spiral. And we know that if we go too far towards any kind of extreme archetype in terms of our expression, that we could be potentially cutting ourselves off from being able to harmonize or resonate with certain people. So we go to extremes at our own expense, potentially.
Yeah, and I can see why it could be disappointing for some people who, let's say, meet somebody who's integral because they might think, well, that person is like super spiritual versus just spiritual. But then you're like, but he's just like any other person. Why doesn't he have like some special ornament or something?
Right.
But that's the point. It's kind of ironic, but New Age spirituality is just another thing to grow out of. And then you're like, okay, now I can become a normal person again. Simple as that. If you're a person in the New Age, don't think this is the end of the line. There's still awakenings beyond that. It's not like, okay, I'm now forever gonna wear like pink pajamas or yoga pants and this is it. And
it's not about creating some kind of a character that's like that is super spiritual.
Unless you want to make a lot of money out of that.
Right.
Then you need to create that character.
Were these gurus real or just full of it? To find out, I decided to impersonate a spiritual leader and build my own following. That's how I became Kumare.
Hello. If you act like a guru, then you can become a guru, no?
I will tell my kids, my grandkids, about this wonderful person that came into my life and changed me.
I am the biggest faker that I know. I fake so much, I forget who I was before.
But I like that, the idea that we have a spiritual attitude towards our regular life and we don't feel like we have to dress things up to make them spiritual. We can appreciate sacredness of how things already are, just how they are, without having to be dressed up. And this is kind of the point that they end on, which is the idea that this is it. You don't have to wait for it for some other time. It's not after you die. This is it. It's right here and now. These are the moments in which we are God interacting with itself. We are in form and able to create and do something, this is the field of play. If you're not getting it here and now, you're not getting it. You're missing it. So if you're waiting for some other time, if you're waiting at all, if you're waiting for some other person, you need to stop. You need to wake up and be it.
It's like almost practicing a mindset of, okay, if not now, when? Because now is the only thing I have. It's important to think about future and have goals and all that stuff, but everything you're ever gonna do in your life is this moment. And obviously Eckhart Tolle and other spiritual teachers said that millions of times, so I'm not really even saying anything new here. But I think it is a good thing to train yourself into this mindset when, if not this moment, and try to find passions in your life and bring something valuable to the culture that we live in, because that's all you have at the end of the day. Don't prepare yourself for the next life. Don't think about what you've done in a previous life. Just do something useful now, today.
In the immortal words of Rage Against the Machine,
It has to start somewhere. It has to start sometime. What better place than here? What better time than now?
I think that's a great note to end it on.
Yeah, I agree. So I hope that we help some New Age people and also people who are interested in Joseph Campbell. Maybe they got some new insights with our talk. Obviously, you did more of the heavy lift, added a few things here and there about New Age spirituality. But the reason I'm adding about New Age spirituality is because I see a lot of problems in this area. That's why I'm doing. Because there's so many people confused about this. I just wanted to bring out falsehoods of New Age spirituality that's plaguing our society.
Like you said, the people who are in those stages right now, they're the people who we're trying to talk to, because we can show them how to make these distinctions and move up into the next stages for them to grow up into. And if they're thinking that they're done, then we are here to tell them that they have some more work to do.
Yeah, I hope this show or anything that both of us do is like a letter to the higher perspective. And even with us, we are well aware that what we're doing and saying now could change. Maybe in 5 years we will say, holy shit, we're totally wrong. This is our new perspective now. So we are aware of our own limit even within the stage we are now. So at no point do I think, okay, now integral is because I know there's going to be a lot more higher peaks than that. And knowing that is important.
Yeah, I think that's right. Even at the cutting edge of where we're at in terms of integral philosophy, we're still building out there. We're still working on refining the maps at the cutting edge. Even we don't think we're done, is what you're saying. We know that there's still a lot more work to do.
And don't expect like integral people to be super healthy or mature. We are all, like I said, we're all in a way little children who argue all the time. So it's not like integral is like this super high mature level. I mean, it is maturer than most level beforehand, of course, but in the end of the day, even integral, you see that people are still monkeys.
Top of the food chain, guerrilla war deep in my veins.
And you can see that. So don't like romanticize integral level.
Have shadow issues, still have work to do.
Yeah, of course, projecting one another.
Integralists are so used to being the smartest person in the room that when you get a bunch of us together, it can be very much like herding cats, and it often is not as nice and peaceful as you might think it should be. Make sure you join the I Am Friends and Fans group on Facebook, and I hope you guys are watching The Power of Myth along with us and all that kind of stuff. We'll see you next episode.
And also try to share, if you have somebody who is like too much in the new agey kind of thing, share this video to him and maybe he might get a bit more down to earth. It could be useful talk for that person specifically. Thanks everybody for joining in. Comment, like, share and subscribe, and ring that bell for the YouTube viewers.
Thanks everybody for watching. Peace.
Peace.